Hi, welcome to Wisdom from the Angels. Hi, my name is Carolyn, and today I'm coming to you with a different message than I normally do. September is National Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. It is also Angel Month. And before I get into my story, yes, on this channel we do say, get the flock in here. And for this topic, we need the flock and more. If you're new, welcome, welcome. Sorry to hit you with such a hard topic. Please hit the bell for future notifications and give it a like. Share it with someone who may need it. September is National Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. However, suicides happen every single day. During this unusual and unprecedented year, suicide is going to be on the upswing, unfortunately. Suicide claims many lives over the course of time. One of the biggest groups is children between the ages of 10 and 25, people over 60, men, white men are really one of the top statistics. And interestingly enough, African Americans and Hispanics are at the opposite end of the spectrum. But any loss of life is entirely too much. The number for the National Suicide Prevention line is 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline or Lifeline. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To provide emotional support for someone who is in crisis or who is having emotional distress. They're there to listen, to help, and to guide you. Yes, you can call on the angels as well for support. This is the 4th time I've tried to do this video. Either the audio didn't work, or it didn't upload properly, or something else happened. March 17th, 2004. I was awakened at 3 a.m. It felt like someone had moved my bed. My pups were asleep at the bottom of the bed on the couch, so I knew it wasn't them. And I couldn't move. I was wide awake, but it was as if I was at the dentist's office when they put that apron on you before they take your x-rays. It felt like I just couldn't move. I felt the warmth around me, and I felt very loving presence, and I felt my cheeks being rubbed and my arms being rubbed, and I kept hearing, "You're not alone. You are not alone. You're not alone." And I kept thinking, what is going on? And as I went to get up each time, I couldn't move. I fell back to sleep at some point, and I woke up at 8:30, frazzled. I had a class at 9:30, and I woke up, jumped out of bed, ran to the shower, got the dog's breakfast, got my breakfast, let the pups out, let them back in, took off from my class. And at some point in this frenzy, I remember yelling out to my husband to say good morning, Hope you have a good day. I'm off to class. As I drove, I noticed that crackling static around me continued. Couldn't put my finger on it because it was nothing I'd ever felt before. After class, my teacher, who knew our family, said, "Is everything all right? Because you were a little different today." And I said, "Something's going on. I can feel electricity around me. This feels weird." She said, "Yeah, I can see it. She's also an energy worker. She said, "I can see it." She said, "Call me later and let me know how I can support you." I didn't ask her what she saw. I went on about my day, made a big dinner. We were going to take it to my son's home. He lived about 5 minutes away. He was at the end of the flu, and we were all going to get together for dinner. Or at least that's the conversation my husband and I had the night before. And the night before, he had said, "Just remember, I love you. I will always love you. You were the best that ever could have happened in my entire lifetime. You saved me." And I remember asking him, "What's going on? Are you all right?" And he said, "I will be very soon." Earlier that week, over the weekend, he had been sad. Our daughter had gone back to school after spring break. And I thought, well, that must be what it is. He's just sad she's not here. And I'd asked him then too, "Are you okay?" That Monday, something said, call his doctor, talk to them because he's headed there for an appointment. Let his psychiatrist know how you feel he's doing. And I did. And I told her then on the phone, "I'm not asking for any information, but I want you to know I don't think he's in a good place. There is a resolve around him I've not seen before, and I've known this man for over 30-something years." And she said, "Okay, I'll talk to him." Later, she'd call back and say, "I can't tell you what happened in the session, but he seemed okay to me." And I remember thinking, how can that be? When he got back from the appointment, he'd been gone a long time, and he got back from the appointment. I said, "How did it go?" He said, "Okay." He said, "I just went to the movies. I just needed to go see something different." I said, "Oh, okay. I thought if you went to the movies." The Tuesday night before, he would say, "Tomorrow, don't wake me up until it's time for dinner around 5. I think I'm going to sleep in. I've been really not feeling 100%. Again, I asked, "What's going on, and are you okay?" 10 years prior, my husband, who was a physician, loved his practice, loved his patients, fell in the shower, cracked his back in 3 places at the age of 50, and ended his surgical career. That fall would end his surgical career. And from that moment on, at times he was someone I didn't know. Illness, chronic illness, can change a person. Depression can change a person. He was being treated for both. And part of his illness was not having the correct diagnosis for 6 years. And you might say, how could that happen? He was a physician. How could other physicians get it so wrong? Well, they're not trained on rare disease. And he had a rare disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. And it does some really funky things to the body. And because it is inherited, I became concerned for my 2 children. My husband had no way of knowing because it was a new disease that didn't become known until the 70s. So a lot of doctors were not trained in rare disorders or disease. Came back from class, made a big dinner, baked a red velvet cake, got ready to package up everything to go to my son's house, and I went up to wake up my husband like he had asked me to at 5 p.m. The time we lived in Philadelphia, and I went up to wake him. I don't remember going up the stairs, when I got to the top, I thought, this is odd. How'd they get up here? It was as if I floated. And the crackling came back. Not that it ever left, but it was like I had walked into a staticky hallway. And I thought, this day is going to change my life. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 2004, was one of the most dramatic and most devastatingly profound days of my entire life. I would walk in, put down the bottle of water I brought up in the glass of iced tea, and I would see my husband had lined up all his medicines on his nightstand, something he never did before. He never had his medicine out. And I remember the first words out of my mouth were, "Kirk, what did you do?" And as I looked across the bed and he was on the other side, kneeling down beside his bed, I thought, holy crap. Kirk, what did you do? And as I walked around the bed and he didn't move and he didn't respond, when I touched him, he was stiff as a board. I then looked for the phone and I realized he had taken the phone out of his room. His cell phone wasn't on his nightstand, nor was the house phone. And I thought, this is weird. So I went in search of a phone. And I called my son and I said, "Marcus, we can't come there for dinner. I went to wake up your dad." And he didn't answer me. He said, "Mom, call 911. I'm on my way." I let the pups out. I fed them because I didn't know what would happen once I called 911. And I thought, that's just one less thing. I went back upstairs and called. And they said, "We're sending someone now. Stay on the line." The fire chief arrived and said, "Please, not Doc." I said, "I can't get him to talk. And he's really stiff." My brain could not process this. Even though for years my husband had said, "I won't live to be an old man. I probably will never see my grandchildren." And with that, as the paramedics came in, followed closely by my son, I got out of their way and stood at the doorway as they took him off the bed and laid him onto the carpet, trying to just find some semblance of life. And as I stood there and my son stood there and I could see how devastated he was, all I could think of was, holy crap, what a day. The next few hours went by in a big blur, because now we had to get my daughter home from college and I didn't want her flying knowing that her father had died. So I called her college, spoke to the dean of women, and they went over and told her. I didn't tell her what happened. I said, "We have a family emergency." When she called, I said, "Your father is on his way to the hospital." I didn't say he was going to the morgue. The next 10 days were a flash as we contacted friends and relatives, and a friend stopped by and said, I had called her that night to say, we aren't going to be able to go to dinner on Saturday with you. Kirk died. And she came by as she was on her way out of town for a business trip. And she said, oh my God, oh my God. And as the service, the celebration of life took place, and people sang and they danced, and I had people come in from all walks of his life, because we lived all over the United States, from New York to Florida to California to Philadelphia. I wanted people to know about him who were sitting in the audience. So I had some of his friends talk about him from different stages of his life. Once the kids were back at school, I had said, let's check in every day at 5 o'clock. I'm going on a 30-day of silence. And I let my friends know I won't be available for the next 30 days. I'm going to be in silence. I'm going to be grieving. I'm not ignoring you, but I just need this time. And they said, is it okay if we email? Because back then I don't think we had texting yet. And I said, sure, but just understand I may not get back to you right away. And in that first week, when everyone went back, I can remember setting the thermostat at 80 degrees in the house, because this was Philadelphia in March and it's cold. I remember sitting there with quilts around me, trying to just feel some warmth. And at one point, I remember crying and screaming and crying some more and screaming some more. I remember his doctors calling to say, what happened? I remember friends coming by and knocking, and I would meet them at the door and just let them know I'm just not good right now. And a few weeks later, when I was feeling better, calls were still coming in, and I remember one call being, girl, I can't wait to be at your next wedding. And after a statement like that, you pop out of grief for a moment. And I thought, well, you were an acquaintance. Now you're not even on that list. And then I began to notice over the next year, friends stopped calling as often. People I thought I could rely on, we'd always been there for them, kind of was ducking and dodging. I remember going to lunch with someone about a year later and asking, hey, what happened? And them saying, well, we were all sitting around talking, and we were remembering how our husbands complimented you at one point in time, and how we kind of thought, girl, we're too old for divorce. And I remember going, what? Because that was as cruel as the call where someone says, I can't wait for your next wedding. And I remember the inappropriate responses when we were calling to say, hey, he passed. And I remember someone who he trained with said, girl, you ain't gonna never find someone as good as him, because he treated you like a queen. What in the world? None of this made sense. Weeks later, I'd be sitting there one day alone with all the quilts around me, and I looked at the urn, and I remember thinking in that one moment, yeah, 5 stages of grief, man, there's more than 5. And I remembered all of a sudden I had magical thinking that I could find a ritual online that could put all these molecules back together again. You know, like Humpty Dumpty. There wasn't one. My buddy, my best friend, my husband of over 30 years was gone. He chose St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 2004, as the day that he would end his life. It would be the day that I would become part of a group of women and, well, a people known as widows. Widow at 49. Gee, thanks, Kirk. And from the moment that he died until today, my life has not been the same. Birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day, Father's Day, the day of his passing, all very different. A lot of mountains and valleys, jumped over a lot of puddles. Since that time. Magical thinking. I remember walking down a street in New York and thinking I saw him across the street. I remember being at a play on a date and I thought I saw him sitting in the audience. I can remember going to the movies on a date and turning to my date to say something that I knew Kirk would understand and realizing it wasn't him. And running out on the date in tears because I couldn't even explain. And I knew then I wasn't ready for dating. Lesson. There are many causes that people have for taking their life. It can be a medical illness. It can be financial devastation. It can be the loss of a home, a loss of a pet, a loss of a job. It affects white men more than any other statistic. It affects young children between 10 and 25. It affects everyone across all spectrums. Interestingly enough, African Americans and Hispanic Americans are at the lower end of the spectrum, thank goodness. But loss of one life is the loss of too many. And so at this time where we are dealing with so much chaos, so much uncertainty, and I unfortunately believe that mental illness is going to be on the upswing, please, I beg of you, please get help. If you're feeling alone, please get help. If you suspect a friend is in need, please get help. If someone talks about suicide, have that conversation with them. That doesn't mean they're going to do something, but at least acknowledge them. Be careful who you cast out of your life, because that could be the last action and the last conversation you have with them. We have to be kinder to each other and much more compassionate. Take the time to listen to someone. I can remember a friend years later would come to me as we were saying goodbye to another friend and saying, you know, Carolyn, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, sure. And we went to another side of the room, and I noticed his wife sat there kind of looking like, oh, Lord, he's telling her. And apparently, my husband had called him a few days before he was going to take his life, telling him he had made the decision that he was going to be passing over real soon, and that he didn't need to worry about the family because we were well taken care of. But that he just didn't want to be here anymore. And this person responded with, just wait till spring. We'll go fishing and work it all out on a boat. And as the person told me the story, I said, why didn't you have that conversation with me then? So 6 years later, we're having this conversation because why? You're guilty? Feeling a little guilty? You should. Have the conversation with family members. Suicide and someone who is talking to you about suicide is no time to keep a secret. Please, please, if you are in need of care, if you feel like you can't go on, if you feel you're alone and you're suffering because of it, call the National Suicide Lifeline, please. That number again is 1-800-273-8255. I apologize if this is a hard video for you to listen to or to even see. I cannot even begin to tell you how transformative death can be. And as family and friends went on about their way in their lives, were impacted. No one can know how much the life of a wife or husband who has lost someone they love dearly can be affected. No one can know how painful it can be for children, even though my two were in their 20s. No one can know just how devastating it can be. And while for the last 16 years my conversation has been with our family to keep one foot in front of the other and to keep moving forward, at times it has been a struggle. And I can remember for the first 30 days after my husband's passing, I had a note on my mirror in my bathroom that said, get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, shower, put on fresh clothes every day. And that marked a profound moment where I knew my life had changed. And slowly, one by one, I've watched, especially in the first couple of years, people slowly back out of the room and out of friendships and relationships. Some would say it was just too close to home. Some would say I was in so much pain I didn't know what to do. Some would say I thought that you would go after my husband. Others would say, oh, that's so sad to hear he passed. How are you doing? Well, you know, we're about to go on a vacation. Others would back away. Some would put him on a pedestal and he became a saint. And to that I quickly took offense because he was a complicated man. And I might have spilled some family secrets that I probably really distorted their view of him. But at the end of the day, we are all human and we are trying to get through this experience called life in the best way we possibly can. So I say that to say, as we go through such uncertain times, as we are living with such chaos, please be kind. Please be compassionate. Please take a moment, pick up the phone, call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. If there are bridges to be mended, and you feel that you can mend them, mend them. That may be the last time you get to speak to them. So yes, if you are alone, call. call out for the angels and say, get the flock in here. But let's begin to really embrace each other as human beings on this planet, going through a very spiritual adventure. Thank you for listening. I so appreciate it. And I hope that you'll share this with someone who might need to hear this message. Again, the National Suicide and Awareness and Prevention Month is September. And there is a helpline you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the phone number is 1-800-273-8255. I appreciate you. I thank you so much for listening. And please be well. Thank you so much.